Sherleaf by J. Pilgrim. Chapter 14, A New Beginning. Bob sat on the hard bed of his police cell, staring at the gray walls that had become his world over the past week. The days blurred together. Meals slid through the hatch, the occasional officer stopping by with updates on his case. The hum of distant conversations beyond the thick bars. But mostly, it was silence. A silence filled with uncertainty, filled with regret. The only thing keeping him grounded was the thought of Mary, of her laughter, of how, for the first time in years, she had looked at him with something other than fear and disappointment. An officer rapped on the bars, drawing Bob from his thoughts. "You've got visitors." Bob stood slowly, his heart hammering against his ribs. He followed the officer down the hall and through a heavy metal door into a stark interview room. The moment he stepped inside, his breath caught in his throat. Kate and Mary were seated at the table. Mary's eyes lit up the moment she saw him. Dad. Bob hesitated for a fraction of a second before moving forward, sitting across from them. "Hey, kid." Mary studied him, her brows knitted together. "You look tired." Bob smirked and said gently, "You try sleeping in a cell and see how well rested you feel." Kate sighed, shifting in her seat. "She's been asking to see you all week. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea, but she wouldn't let it go." Mary folded her arms. "Because it was a good idea. I told Mom you've changed." Bob glanced at Kate, hesitant. "And do you believe that?" Kate exhaled, drumming her fingers on the table. "I'm not sure yet, Bob. I know you're not the same person you were in Johnsonville. But that doesn't erase everything that's happened." Bob nodded slowly. "I wouldn't expect it to. I mean, it will take time to prove to you that I am committed to this family. Sherleaf gave me a second chance and the road trip changed my perspective." Mary leaned forward, looking between them. "Dad tried, Mom. He really did. And not just because of Sherleaf. Because of me. He wanted to bring us together again." Kate's expression softened slightly at their daughter's conviction. "Sherleaf. I still don't know what to think about all of that." Bob chuckled wryly. "You think I do? All I know is that something changed in me. Whether you believe in a spirit guide or just call it me finally growing up, it happened. And I don't want to go back to who I was." Kate studied him, searching his face for something. "Truth, maybe. A reason to believe." Kate asked, "And what happens now?" Bob looked up and sighed. "I don't know. They want me to go through a psychiatric evaluation. The court will decide if I stay in jail or get sent somewhere else, but whatever happens, I want to be in Mary's life." "And yours." Mary nodded fiercely. "Me too." Kate looked at their daughter, then back at Bob. "Then we'll figure it out. One step at a time." Bob felt a lump rise in his throat. He hadn't won back their trust completely. Not yet. But the fact that they were here, that they were trying, that meant everything. Mary reached across the table and grabbed his hand. "No matter what, we're a family." Bob squeezed her fingers gently. "Yeah, kid?" "We are." Sherleaf's appearance. Weeks later, Bob sat on the edge of his cot in the dimly lit prison cell, staring at the small barred window above. The air was cool, the sounds of the facility distant yet constant. Muffled voices, the occasional clang of metal doors, the echo of footsteps along the corridor. He had known this was coming, 6 months inside. A consequence for his actions. But for the first time in years, he wasn't running from responsibility. He was facing it. His mind drifted back to earlier that day. Kate and Mary sitting across from him in the visitation room, hands clasped together, a quiet understanding passing between them. 6 months isn't forever, Kate had said. "We'll be here, waiting for you." Mary had gripped his hand tightly. "Every week, Dad. We'll come every week." For the first time in his life, Bob believed them. He wasn't being left behind. He had a family. He had a future. Now, as night settled over the prison, he let out a slow breath. Then, a familiar voice echoed through the small cell. It appears you have overcome your internal conflicts. Bob turned his head slowly, and there, leaning casually against the bars of his cell, was Sherleaf. The spirit guide looked just as he had before. Tall, dressed in his ever-pristine white suit, his white beard flowing down his chest. His piercing blue eyes held the same knowing glint, as if he had been watching everything unfold, as if he had always known it would lead to this moment. Bob scoffed. "So, you're back." Sherleaf grinned. "I never left." Bob exhaled deeply as he stood to his feet. "Well, if you knew all this was going to happen, you could have given me a better heads-up." Sherleaf chuckled. "That was never my role, Bob. You had to make the journey yourself. You had to learn to bond with your daughter, and you chose to push all boundaries to achieve the goal." Bob nodded before asking, "So, what now? You just disappear and leave me to figure out the rest on my own?" Sherleaf's expression softened. "You don't need me anymore. You have changed. Not only because I guided you, but because you chose to be better. That choice was always yours." Bob let that sink in. For so long, he had believed he was doomed to be the man he had always been. Reckless, selfish, lost. But here he was, an improved version. "Kate and Mary, they'll really wait for me?" Bob asked, his voice quieter. Sherleaf nodded. "They will, because they see the man you are becoming, not the man you were." Bob swallowed hard. "And you? You're just going to disappear forever?" Sherleaf smiled knowingly. "I will always be with you, even if you can't see me." Bob opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Sherleaf's form began to shimmer, his edges blurring like mist in the morning sun. "Be well, Bob," Sherleaf said, his voice warm. "Your journey has been entertaining. Stay strong and keep the faith." And then, just like that, he was gone, fading into the ether, leaving behind only the faintest whisper of energy, a sense of peace Bob hadn't felt in years. Bob leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid of what came next. 6 months. Then, a new beginning with his family. Hey friends, thanks for watching this series. Remember to connect with J. Pilgrim. Discover the magic, embrace the wisdom, and live the adventure. Check out the links in the description, and if you enjoy these stories, click like, subscribe, and share. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next series.